Hello.
All right, so I'd like to introduce ourselves. My name's Jane. I am the product manager on Developer Experience. Developer Experience is a new team at Stellar, and we're here to make developers' lives easier. So Lab is one of the products that we own, and you may also have seen Chaz talk yesterday about the Stellar CLI. We also work on that.
My name is Jeesun. I've been at Stellar for about 6 years. I initially joined as a dev working on Stellar website, then moved on to Vibrant, working as a React Native engineer. And I joined DevX team early this year to work on the lab. And as a wallet engineer, I can attest that the lab is a great developer tool.
Cool. So today we'd like to introduce Stellar Lab. And G will walk through the old lab versus the new Stellar Lab and tell you about all the cool features that we built and shipped. And I will also talk about integration with the Stellar CLI. And finally, for the Meridian attendees, we're going to give you a sneak peek of smart contract features in Stellar Lab. So I'm really excited about that. So if you are a developer on Stellar, you probably use the old Laboratory. Laboratory is a great way to understand how to use the Horizon API. However, that product has been stale for quite some time. And so this year, we invested on building the new Stellar Lab. And we released that in August and have been working on Lab since, taking into the feedback from the community. And now Lab is in a really great place. So if you like to check out Lab, please go to lab.stellar.org, or you can scan this QR code on your mobile or laptop, and you can follow along in our presentation. So what is the motivation for building the new lab? We knew that lab is very important, especially during the onboarding piece of the developer experience for Stellar. It teaches you how to communicate with the network. And so it shows the entire data access layer. We also shipped new enhanced functionalities for developers, especially with respect to collaboration and reusing the same transactions, reusing the same saved endpoints. With the launch of Sorbonne earlier this year and the RPC, we want to bring Stellar Lab up to the current state of the network. And this means we're also bringing the Sorbonne RPC into the Stellar Lab. There are many long-standing bugs, and there's an underinvestment, admittedly, on this very important developer tool. So we worked on fixing the user experience, as well as addressing some of the application bugs. And also, Lab is not just used by developers. It is also used by users who needed a web UI, a no-code way of building transactions and sign those transactions and submit on the mainnet. We know that this is used by very large partners, as well as like our own finance team. So we want to make sure that their user experience is really good. But this also means we want to build the new lab that's not too different from the old lab, so that these users don't have to learn lab from scratch all over again. And finally, the DevX team worked on a XDR to JSON mapping. And this is actually a very important piece of work that permeates through many layers of our stack. And you will see an example of this at work in the Stellar Lab. So now I'll hand to G.
And I'm very excited to show a comparison between old and new Stellar Lab. So we've heard from dedicated developers that they love to view XDR on mobile devices. So we added a mobile responsive layout, and we used our internal design system tool called the Stellar Design System to expedite our build process. Special shout out to Charles, our phenomenal product designer, sitting right there. He's giving a talk later at 4:10 here. We also led a design effort for this, but also the new lab. And another shout out to our engineer, Iveta, who led the engineering effort for this and the new lab. The new lab would have taken a long time without these two people. So I'm going to walk you through the homepage. So before, let's say I'm a new developer, I'm coming to the lab. It's it's kind of, there's no like clear call to action. Like I don't know where to start on how to build on Stellar. So in our new lab, we added 4 clear call to action links. So it's starting with Stellar Quest, developer tools, and documentation on sort of on RPC and Horizon. And for create account, in our old lab, there wasn't much hierarchy, and we mixed a lot of the features like key pair generator, friend bot, and complex feature like booked account, which we built it for exchanges like Coinbase, so you can link one Stellar address to multiple users, and that's not something that normal developer would use. So in the new lab, we decided to create more hierarchy and separate these concerns into separate sections. So much cleaner UX. I like it, and I hope you like it too. And transaction flow. Can you click it? So transaction flow, we added Stellar Wallet Kit built by Enrique, who also built Expo. So we are doing Expo transaction. So instead of copying and paste the public address, we click a button to get the address, and now we're going to sign in transaction flow. And just like we did with get connected address earlier, we can just click a button to sign transaction. And it's much better UX, and just wanted to give shout out to Enrique, who couldn't be at Meridian this year. It's such an amazing developer tool, so big thanks to people like Enrique. Next slide. Oh. Wait, did it work? Okay, so in the OLAP, so View XDR is also one of the most popular feature we have on the lab. So in the OLAP, you import base64 encoded XDR, and you have like a bunch of XDR types to choose from, and it gives you human-readable format, but it doesn't do much beyond that. But in the new lab, we have a new library called XDR to JSON web library that gives you like decode, encode method, but on top of that, it also gives you guess the XDR type. So once you import the XDR, it's gonna give you possible types and gives you the response in JSON, so you can copy and paste. So more than just providing you human-readable information. And the new lab now supports both RPC methods and Horizon endpoint. And RPC's response is now supports base64 and JSON. So let's say in the old lab, it will give you base64 encoded XDR, but now you can toggle between XDR and JSON, or base64 and JSON to get the full information right away in the JSON response. Oh, who said that? Oh, yeah. So get ledger entries is a very powerful tool to kind of understand your contract data, and you can get states from the ledger like accounts, trust lines, offers, data, liquidity pools, contract volume, and contract instance. We hear a lot from developers on Discord, like, how can I get information on my contract data? And we always say, go to get ledger entries. We will really work on making this documentation better, but the tool is there for you to use. Another cool thing about this page is that we also use XDR to JSON. So if you can replay this, it's like you import XDR, then we use XDR to JSON to convert it to JSON and use that JSON to populate form. And you can do vice versa, where if you say, I'm going to pick account and add this address, we put that in the JSON, and then it will output in XDR. So you can do like vice versa. And the new lab now supports save transaction and request. And this is a really powerful feature. I can talk from my experience on working on Vibrant. There's a transaction that you have to run every time there's testnet reset. So for example, we have to run adding trust line to USDC. So with the new lab, you can save that transaction and use that transaction every time testnet runs by just changing the destination address. And it's going to save you a ton of time, and it's very, very useful. So I'm very excited for this. And we now also support shared transactions and requests. This is a very useful, let's say you have like an expense account with 3 users able to submit TX. So let's say finance team, 3 finance team members have control over this one account. Instead of, I don't know how they do it, but you can just simply copy and share that transaction, and each member can just add their signature and then submit TX.
All right. So we also released the canonical XDR to JSON mapping, and this is actually something that DevX team worked on. There are certain characteristics with these libraries. First, they're round-trippable, which means if you start with XDR and convert to JSON and then convert back to the XDR, you will get the exactly same XDR, no matter how many times you do that. And it's also self-describing. So the JSON has field names and value, but it does not describe its type. And this matches how XDR works, which it self-describes the field name and the value, but does not define the encoded type. And finally, we released actually 2 libraries, one for JavaScript called the Stellar XDR JSON NPM package. This allows you, if you're in the JavaScript world, you can use this package to convert from XDR to JSON, back to XDR. And we also released a Rust crate, the Stellar XDR crate. And so if you're writing Rust, you can do something very similar. So both these libraries are now out, but they are experimental. So the caveat here is if you do choose to use them, I'd encourage that you try out. Please consider not persist your data in JSON, because JSON right now is not backward compatible. Persist your data in XDR and basically convert on the fly and use your applications. OK, so we can see this XDR to JSON mapping at work in lab. Historically, lab converts XDR to decoded XDR, which is something that's very uniquely Stellar. Now it converts to JSON. And the nice thing and the subtle thing here is once you convert the XDR to JSON, that JSON actually can be edited. So let's say you deploy the hello world contract and you invoke hello world with like hello and you pass in the string world. Here you can basically change the world to like a different strings. Let's say dev and create hello dev. Now you construct a transaction envelope with a different string that is valid transaction envelope, which can then be signed with lab and submitted to the network. And so if we see a high uptick of developers trying to edit transactions in JSON, we may try to move our toolings in that direction going forward. As you know, we're also working on the Stellar CLI, which has a number of really cool features. But the Stellar CLI currently does not provide signing for all the wallets in the ecosystem. So here we create an integration to the lab. And you can see in this video that I'm using the Stellar contract deploy to deploy a WASM. Then I'm going to pipe the result into the TX simulate to simulate. And then finally, that result is piped to Stellar TX sign -- sign with lab. And what that does is take the transaction envelope and open a tab in the lab. Stellar Lab enables you to sign transactions using a private key, using a hardware wallet, ledger, Trezor. You can also use the Stellar Wallet Kit, which integrates with all the major wallets in our ecosystem. So in this way, you can create a transaction using the CLI and sign it in the lab. Right now, you sign in the lab and you submit on lab using the RPC, but in the future, we will enable you to return the transaction back to the CLI so you can pipe the results into the next call. All right. And now, this is the most exciting section, in my opinion, is upcoming smart contract features. As you know, now we have lots of cool smart contracts getting deployed on mainnet. So if you're a developer, you're trying to interact with those contracts, what is a good way? So in the future, in Q4, we're going to work on smart contract features. So on the screen, you can see a contract list that says for the mainnet, and the contracts that have been deployed in the last 24 hours, and the verified contract. So let's say I scroll down the list, and I see a Reflector contract. Now I want to learn a little bit about Reflector. I'm going to click on the C address. which takes me to the Contract Explorer. And when I load this contract, it's going to grab some information, including its name, description, and the code path. Now, all this information is stored in the custom meta section on the contract. So we're actually building the ability to write meta during contract deploy in the CLI. You can also see the bindings. So Chad went a little bit over bindings. You can include bindings in your application. You can also see the contract spec, which is the ABI. It tells you this contract's interface, the methods available to call, the parameters those methods take. And for a verified contract, we're actually going to be able to point to the codes. So if you really want to understand what this contract does, you can read the code base. And if you open View in the IDE, it's going to open this code in an IDE. And yeah, you can dig into the code base before you start using this contract. So let's say if your dApp is dependent on multiple smart contracts, this is a great way to understand the contract. Or if you're looking to know how to use a specific pattern, the code patterns are here. Some contracts have their own storage. So you may want to understand, all right, for this DeFi contract, who are the users, what are their balances, or what is the current state of the contract? So we give you a view to understand the contract at this point in time. And of course, we show you the WASM version history. So now I grokked the contract. Let's say I'm ready to interact with the contract, but I'm not ready to write the code yet. Now you can tab onto the Invoke Contract tab. And we're going to generate this using the contract spec. And from the dropdown, I can select a method. And this is called check liquidation, which takes a contract ID and the liquidation number. So I can complete this form. And let's see what happens. Next, I'm going to connect my wallet. So this is a wallet kit. You can connect, for example, to Freighter. Let's connect this wallet. And now I'm ready to sign this contract invocation. And once it is signed, it is submit, and I receive the transaction response from the RPC. So here I'm able to invoke this contract just using web. No code is needed. And certain contract invocation actually change the state. So let's say it updates the states. You can come back to the lab and see that the state has been updated, and this is now the current state. So this is a sneak peek of the new functionalities we're building in Q4. If you have any questions, suggestions, ideas about the smart contract or anything we build, we encourage you to come talk to us and submit a feature request on GitHub. Also, Lab is completely open source, so if you're a partner looking to understand our RPC, our Horizon, the data access layer in general, you can git clone the repository. And now we'll take any questions you may have. D9.